Welcome to the Vertical Shift Podcast, where we engage in candid conversation about life topics and real issues from a Christian perspective. I'm Justin.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Tommy.
All right, let's get started, guys.
All right.
We're back.
Boys are back in town.
The men.
Oh, yeah. The men. Boys to men. Okay, never mind. So, guys, we have been on a hiatus.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, we ended the season, our first season. I mean, we've been busy.
Mm-hmm.
We have been busy.
Holidays, family time. Jeff went on yet another international trip.
I did.
Yeah.
And, but we're back.
So technically, we went international, right? Jeff going overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you pass out any
Speaking of
podcast
which-
cards or anything, or let people know over there?
I did not.
No,
I did not.
got it. Wasn't about us. Okay.
It wasn't. No, but I did think, man, we've got to come up with some kind of portable recording
I'm
system.
sure that
I
if
want to do some
we
interviews.
we'll invent something.
I mean, there's stuff out there.
Or it probably already exists.
That was, I'm
Invent
trying to make a
stuff.
joke. Okay, because there's something
No,
there.
there's no button for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, listen. So this is a new year. We're going to call this season 2. We're coming in. We are going to change that intro song.
No. Okay.
We'll figure it out. But until now,
or
until
we
the-
won't.
or we won't. You're
Or
right.
we won't.
What about the? Justin, I just love the intro, and people don't realize this. That is recorded live every time.
Every time.
You have to get that
That's how
same
consistent
inflection.
I am. Yeah.
I know, and that's just that buttery smooth voice you got.
That's how he answers the phone at his house now. Welcome to. Oh, I mean, hey, this is Justin.
Yeah, you remember I had to do it a couple times. It just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Wasn't
It's not.
No, it's not
But
the
you
same.
did good. You
I mean,
good
it was
second.
okay.
I remember hearing that when we were editing and
Yeah.
putting it on, and I kind of laughed because I thought, not so easy, is it?
No, but you do it. It sounds easy.
I appreciate that. You have great intros.
So we're going to have it. This is a new year. So we are in the new year. This is January for us, everybody listening. And we're so excited to be back. I have been inundated with people asking me, when is Vertical Shift coming back on? I mean, inundated. I have had at least 3 or 4 people reach out.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I mean, that's like 75% of our listeners.
I don't know how
are mad.
I don't know how our vertical.shift.podcast@gmail.com even held up.
I know.
Yeah, actually, I looked at the email. We've got 0 emails. So
Still.
they must have been
was
reaching out
text-
to you.
Nobody
was
wants a
text
shirt,
messages.
apparently. Nobody
was-
wants vertical shift swag, whatever.
It was text messages and Teams messages. No, but on a serious note, I have received some very sweet notes of people asking about us, looking forward to it, and mentioning they really like listening. So, and we always, it was never, I mean, we there was never a thought to stop doing this. We
Right.
just hit vacation, holiday vacation. Jeff went out of the country for 2 months, felt like.
It did feel like it.
And do you want to share anything about your trip to Tokyo or Japan, really?
Yeah, so this was my first time ever to Japan, and we took a team of 17. And I tell you, I learned real quick, I'm never doing that again. Not anything to the folks that went with us. It was just for a first experience,
That's a lot of
especially
people. I
in
mean,
that
that's-
country, a city of 40 million people.
And y'all got 17.
I had 17 people, and man, logistically, it was a nightmare. Like everybody had to have their own little transportation card, and I had to fill everybody's, pay for everybody's. Then when you go out to eat, like some restaurants, the whole restaurant sits 6 people. There's 17 of us, and so now I got 3 different restaurants, and you have to pay for each individual. I mean, I had like 100 receipts on day 1. It was crazy.
There's got to be a better way.
Got to be a better way.
We'll figure it
and
out.
it was, hey,
Take less people.
hey, spend $10 to $15 a meal and keep your receipts. I'll reimburse you when we get back. That's what I did.
Exactly.
But
Hey,
it was rough.
before you get any, did anyone ever try to order pizza?
No.
Okay. Like I was just, if you and I were there, we would have tried to
we
order
would've.
pizza.
Yeah.
And
We
we
made
would have.
fools of ourselves in Colombia trying to order a pizza.
The
together.
missionary over there ordered it for us.
Hmm.
So I didn't have to do it.
Oh, that was nice of him.
That was nice.
Because we had you with us and you didn't help us.
I wasn't with you. You walked off because you had pride in your heart that you
Oh,
could do it
my
on your own.
word. I'm pretty sure I specifically remember, like, well, if that's what you want, go get it. Yeah. We remember different stories.
Yeah.
By then I was done with you guys. No. I tell you, I do want to tell a couple of cool stories. And so I don't know when in the segment you want to do that. But
Now.
okay. All right. So one night we were at the church that we were working with there, and they do what's called English classes. And so English cafe, I was like, English classes, that sounds normal. English cafe. And so they would go out into the surrounding neighborhood and invite people to come back to a little building beside the church that they had set up like a little coffee place.
So you go out and you're passing out things just like, or just invite
Or just
people,
telling them,
people
hey,
are walking
you want to
around.
practice English?
Oh, yeah.
Come practice. We got some folks from North America that are here, and so man, I didn't even get to get out of my chair. They already had this kid and his dad came in, and so the kid came and sat down with me, and he's 15 years old, and so he would like type in his phone like a message and translate it
in Japanese,
and it would translate to English, and then he would show me his phone, then I'd read it, and then I would do it, Google Translate right back to him. And I was like, well, this isn't really practicing English. This isn't going anywhere. So I asked him, I was like, man, do you have a picture of your family? And so he pulled a picture of his family out, and he was telling me about his siblings and everything. And he said, this is my mom, and she's from Mexico. And I was like, do you speak Spanish? I was like, yeah.
No, wait. So tell me, but you're doing this in Google Translate. Like you asked him in Japanese, do you speak Spanish? Or did you ask him in Spanish, do you speak Spanish?
No, I asked him in English, do you speak Spanish?
Oh, okay.
There was just
he knew
enough.
enough. Okay.
He said, my mom's from Mexico. And I said, do you speak Spanish? And he was like a little hesitant at first, like not really well. And so we tried a little bit, and he was responding, and his dad was like, well, at first I didn't go to Spanish because he said, not really. I was like, oh man, that would have been really cool. And then later his dad was over there. He's like, he totally speaks Spanish. Like, just talk to him in Spanish. I was like, okay. So I don't know if he understood my
Maybe
English.
he was nervous.
Yeah. And so we started speaking in Spanish, and man, it was the coolest thing because I got to share the gospel with him right there. So this Japanese kid, I share the gospel with him in Spanish.
You're in Japan and
Speaking Spanish.
Wait. You're from Alabama. You're in Japan speaking Spanish. You got to go further.
It's crazy. Yeah. And I remember
And you got put in your chair too. Of all the chairs, of all the
people.
things, of all the people, the 40 million people walking around.
Right.
I mean,
it was bananas. That was a really, really cool experience for me. And I always go back to high school and be like, when am I ever going to use Spanish? Oh man, it's crazy. But so that was one. And then like the next day we were walking down to this mega central area of a city, and this guy just walks out of a convenience store, and he says to me in British English, like, hey, are you headed down to this particular area? I was like, yeah. He's like, can I walk with you? I was like, sure. And he's like, man, what are y'all doing here? And I was like, I told him what we were doing, mission team and all this. He said, man, I really want to get closer to God. And I was like, well, let's talk about that. And so I just went on to proceed to talk to him about where he's coming from and what's going on in his life, and shared the gospel with him. And he really wanted to add Jesus to everything else, right? Like, I just want to meditate. He's like, I feel like I've done that. And I was like, if you had done it, you wouldn't need anything else, right? It's Jesus is sufficient. He doesn't need help. And so I got to pray. Man, the whole team was just standing on the side of the road while I talked to this guy for like 35 minutes. And so I've been a Christian since I was 15 years old. So I've never had somebody walk up to me and be like, hey, what are you doing? Oh man, I want to get closer to God.
The rest of the team's like counting their receipts that they're saving for Jeff, and Jeff's over here sharing the gospel.
They just want to eat lunch. They're starving. And I'm like, hey, just hang on a minute.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I would have said a couple of things. So my son, we went to this, we were at an Air National Guard recruiter over, a couple of days ago. And she asked him, do you speak any foreign language? He looked at me and smiled. I said, boy, don't even say Spanish, because he takes Spanish.
Yeah.
He takes Spanish in high school, and he's terrible. Like, you think I'm bad? He's terrible. He's terrible on purpose, because he's like, we go to the Mexican restaurant and he'll be like, gracias. I'm like, wait, say it right, and he's just like being funny. But at the same time, he gets nervous in those like that boy was probably a little nervous too.
Right.
She asked him, she goes, what religion do you affiliate with? And he looked at me like dumbfounded, like, what do I say? It's like,
Gracias. That's what
it's
you
like,
tell them.
don't you? I said, do you believe in Jesus? I mean, do we need to go through the whole?
Me llamo Mason.
I wish I'd have thought about that. But he was like looking at me dumbfounded. I'm like, boy, don't you believe in Jesus? You know what the answer is. He's like, well, what do I call it?
It blows my mind.
Christianity.
My kids do the same thing. Like Jay said, he was filling out an application. He said, "What's my residence?" And I was like, "Son, seriously?" He's like, "Is that where we live?" I was like, "Yeah, that's your address." He's like, "I guess he had never seen residence." I don't know.
We might have to edit this. I got two belly laughs right there. That was funny. I wasn't expecting residence.
Residence. And I was like, "Oh, well, we have failed you." So,
That's funny.
yeah.
Oh, that is funny. Well, that's good stuff. So let me ask you guys this. Before I ask you the what, I'm going to ask you, well, it's going to start with what. What do you guys think about New Year's resolutions? And I'd like for the listener out there who wants to email vertical.shift.podcast@gmail.com. I've been practicing that, by the way.
That's good.
That's good.
The email is like, what is your opinion on just resolutions in general? Do you think they're stupid, waste of time, we shouldn't do them? What do you guys, I'm curious what you guys, we haven't practiced this. We didn't even talk about this before. So what do you guys think about when you hear New Year's resolution?
I mean, I'm not knocking it.
Okay.
I just feel like I personally don't set them. I mean, I like a new year. I like a new planner and try to, kick off a new year right. But I don't know.
Any
I guess
particular reason why you
no.
don't?
I think in my mind, I just think I do get excited about a new year. But then I joke with my wife. I'm like, every time I get so excited about the new year, especially like after Christmas and New Year's, like inevitably somebody gets sick in our house. So it's just like a bummer on the start of a new year.
It's funny you say that.
Maybe
It's like
that's why I don't-
February 1st.
That's honestly what I've adopted.
Yeah.
Because especially working out, it takes me a month of really slow going at it.
You've got to plan it. You've got to.
When it's cold.
You got to
so
raise
cold.
your arms above
And-
your head a couple of times
And it's
before you start
been
actually.
extra cold
Yeah.
lately. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
So I personally don't. I mean,
So
I
you- so
honestly,
you're like-
I set routines in place for when the new year's starting to kind of get things going, but I don't set up like a New Year's resolution.
Jeff, are you against them? Are you for them? What's your thought?
I welcome New Year's resolutions. My problem is I tend to go overboard and I make it so impossible for myself because I want to like evaluate everything, which is I think is healthy and we need to do. But then like I make it such a
Yeah.
See,
and
exhaustive
and I think the
list.
last time, and we joke about this in small group too, is like the last time I was so excited about a new year to start was the end of 2019. And I remember, like, it was like, man, 2020, right? Focus in 2020 vision, super excited. And then COVID hit. And then like ever since then, I think I've just been like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
So I'll pose this question then. I'm going to flip it a little bit. Justin, your work, you have you set business goals, right, for yourself and your company or whatever. Your company sets business goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if we think about it in that way? We don't call them resolutions at work. We don't call a New Year resolution for work. We call it what's our goals for this year. We do a reflection on what have we accomplished from the previous year. What do we carry over? What are new goals? Why don't we think about it like that in our personal life?
I feel like I do. I feel like I look at it that way, but I feel like I do it periodically throughout the year.
Yeah.
But there's something about a fresh start that's always, to Justin's point, a brand new calendar, brand new journal, and I don't know, it just gives you a little extra motivation to kick off on those things you want to do.
I'm envious of an old colleague that I have, and he literally takes off the week of New Year's, and he will literally reflect on his previous year.
Yeah, I mean,
All that stuff.
bet
And then
he's
literally
probably-
look ahead and go, what didn't work? What did work? What would I do differently?
Exactly.
And he does that with his personal and professional
Yeah.
life that last week. And I'm like,
that
yeah,
is
your kids must be older.
Yeah, I mean, so I was sitting there thinking I could probably start doing that. That's a really good. That's really awesome, and that's exactly why I think is when we look at it in that light, it's less about I think the common thought or definition of what a resolution, what people think about a resolution. A lot of people think that that's different than a goal setting, but it's really the same thing. We just say it differently, and maybe we even think about it differently. But like your colleague or your friend there, really do the full reflection, just like we do in our work life, do the full reflection and, recalibration of what's coming up. And I think it's fresh, and I think it's a thing that, so I have a goal for this year to do that. And I'm not waiting till next year to do it, but it's kind of like Jeff, like you said, I mean, a lot of things happen at the very end of the year and the first of the year, but that's what I'm working on now is exactly that. Mm-hmm. It's also funny too, on the flip side of all that is like, what's the difference between December 31st and January 1st and any other new day? Every single day we have the opportunity to wake up with a fresh start. You know?
That's true. His mercies are new every day. And I'll tell you the difference for me is my son's birthday is December 31st. He wants to stay up till midnight for his birthday. And so I'm exhausted January 1st.
That's just because you're old.
I am old. I did. Yeah.
I mean,
not quite as old as you.
But you act old.
It is funny because I feel like, especially with like health and fitness, like I am more motivated when it starts to warm up.
Me too.
I'm not a cold weather.
I don't have a heater in my
guy.
garage.
Yeah. But so when I think about those things, like there are seasons and stuff, but everything else, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But you're right. I mean, you don't have to, if you don't get it started January,
that's what I mean.
Then,
you
hey,
haven't missed it.
Pick back up. Like,
that's right.
Make a plan, get accountability.
That's right. Don't think that you, just because you didn't start on this one day, you're a failure. You can't do it, because, I mean, some of this requires planning too. And you said exactly what I was going to say too, is I'm not going to go do my 4-mile walk when it's 13 degrees. I mean, it ain't going to happen. I know people. I work with a guy that we were in New York City a couple of weeks ago for work, and we met, we were having our meeting. It was like 8 a.m. and that dude already went and did a 7-mile run around Central Park, and the high temperature was like 22 degrees. I'm like, he's like, did you get your run in? I'm like, well, I walk, but no, I don't want to freeze my lungs. He's like, oh man, I just went and did my run. I'm like, great, thanks. It just made me feel great.
Yeah. He's probably 64 too.
Yeah. Well, I had a snickerdoodle cookie with my coffee. So
the snickerdoodle creamer.
Yeah.
No, he was younger than me, thank goodness.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But anyway, so I just, I'm excited in all those aspects, and the personal goals I have this year certainly include fitness and doing things a little different than I've done before, because I want to see different results. Also, we're going into a new season with my kids. My son is graduating. My daughters are going into high school. So it changes how we parent them a little bit too. And just, we can talk to them a little bit more direct about certain things and helping them plan for the future. And so, my wife and I, coming together on, hey, here's how we're going to communicate things with them. Here's the things we're going to focus on with them. And I will say too, with my faith and my relationship with the Lord, want to take it to a new level. I do. We, just like we prayed before we started this podcast, like this is not about us. I want Him to use this in a way that we can't even imagine. And, how can we just continue to be consistent in our walk so that, these other areas in our life, we can continue to grow those. So,
yeah, we talked a little bit about this tonight in our men's group. And, we have a default system as men in particular to fix things, put things in our own.
Did y'all hear that?
We did hear you. Do things in our own strength. When, our wives disagree with us, make us question, a specific situation or leadership or whatever's going on in our life or way we're parenting. And I feel like I'm failing. It causes me to panic a little bit. Urgency of things, got to get it done now, leads to excuses to, hey, I'm going to knock this list out first, and then 6 months later you find yourself right back into that default system of going to what comes natural instead of staying consistent in your pursuit. And so I think that goes with the whole New Year's resolution type thing too. It's easy to get excited about stuff. It's harder to stick to it.
And, you know, and it's not a blatant disregard. For us, we were talking to that tonight. It's not a blatant disregard that you just purposefully want to keep the Lord out of things. But there is, we try to figure out why isn't He the top of mind and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Right.
Why is it that we can easily forget, or even that's not the word, why is it that we can so easily go to the default way we've done things, instead of putting Him in, someone mentioned it, inside all of the boxes that we had, that we compartmentalize things, and God belongs in some of these boxes and not these other boxes because I take care of those. How do we either get rid of all the boxes, or He is in all the boxes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the, compartment comment that was made tonight, because it was talked about, like, for things that are out of our control, right? Think of severe illness. We can't handle that. We can't fix it. We don't have a solution. God, that one's yours. If it's work, well, I don't really need you there because, like, I'm doing my work. I'm doing
got
my
a degree
job.
in that.
Yeah,
I can handle
got a
it.
degree, or hey, I go in, I do the same thing. Nothing really ever changes, whatever it is, or maybe you have an interaction with somebody and you don't really need God for that. So we start to kind of, to your point, Tom, put Him in compartments, and the comments that were made is just like, no, He wants every aspect of our life and our heart. And the question is whether or not we're recognizing that and really giving all of it over. And Jeff touched on it really well.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you're actively looking for Him wherever we're at, whatever we're doing, we will see what we're maybe there for in that moment,
I really like, and Jeff, I want you to explain that a little.
Yeah.
I really like how you talked about we're changing our mind in how we approach almost every interaction, how we flip that script from the normal way we've done things as a default way of just going through life. How do we flip that script to make every interaction purposeful? And this is exactly that. I'm almost about to shut up, but this is exactly what I think about when I think about the goals I want to set for myself this year, is how do I do that intentionally and consistently?
Yeah, I think, I was just sharing with the guys tonight, like, for me, the game changer in it is thinking about it, viewing every situation, whether it's your family, your work, your neighbors, at church, whatever, as I am in these for a reason for this time, and each relationship is important. Like, and so if I look at it as a relationship issue, and how am I engaging this person with the gospel? How am I showing the love of Christ to them? How are, and viewing it from that mindset, then the situation loses power. I don't go into panic mode. I'm here for you, not to fix this situation. And so, man, it just causes you to step back a moment. It causes you to diffuse a lot of the anxieties that you have. Is this person mad at me or what? Like, just slow down for a minute. How can I show them Christ?
And you even went on to share, which I want you to share this again, because it was really good. In just our daily walk, as we go about our day, like, in the Bible touches, it's not even touch on it. It tells us all of these things, like, as you go, baptize. And maybe the literal sense isn't we're dunking people in the water as we go, but we're telling them, we're sharing the gospel with them. Like, we talked about that for years in church.
Sure.
But until it really physically, like, clicks in your mind what that means, it means taking every situation that you encounter and flipping the script from it being a default way of doing things of, hey, how you doing? Good. Yeah. You're my Uber driver. You're going to take me over here. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. To sharing a gospel or having a conversation or bringing that into it. And you shared, so you went on another trip you went on, by the way.
Yeah.
A conference. You went on a missions conference. So share a little bit about that.
The missions conference is always good for my wife and I to go on each year. It allows us to kind of step back for a moment and really refocus on some things. But you know, I mean, we met this incredible couple there from a different part of Tennessee, and man, we invited them to go out to eat on the one free night. And so they were excited, and we were excited to get to know them, and hopped in the Uber, and it wasn't quite enough room for us. It was a smaller vehicle. So they put me up front with the driver, and
where was he from?
His family was from Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he had just moved from New Mexico, I think. Anyway, I really wanted to get to know this couple. So part of me wanted to just kind of shift my body completely around in the front seat and talk to my new friends. But then I was reminded, at the conference too, like, hey, every opportunity, don't waste it. And so I just started engaging my Uber driver and asking about where he's from and all this stuff. And he was asking me why we were here. And I told him, and man, it just led into them just going to a new church. And he had lots of questions because he came from a Catholic background, and he's trying to share with his mom what he's learning. And he doesn't really understand and grasp everything, but just how much it's impacted his marriage. And so, I mean, we spent 35 minutes or so just encouraging him and talking to him. And, and I think at the same time too, by being obedient to do that, my new friend in the back is watching me, and I don't know where he's at in relation to how he shares the gospel or where he's at with those things. I know me witnessing is always convicting, to see somebody else doing it and be like, oh man, I should have done that.
Yeah, I know.
And so watching me do it, maybe it was like, oh man, I need to be intentional with that and those kinds of things. So, doing that, being intentional in that, other people are observing that. And it's just such a cool opportunity too, man. So many neat things happen when you have your eyes fixed on Christ and those people fixed on the people. Like, and I the sermon Sunday was so good. It was such a reminder of that. We can get so caught up in the battle that was won and how it was won, but it was won for a person, like God's love for them.
All of those events were happening because there was a person that God was watching out for, looking out for. And sometimes we are in those events and we're not the person,
right,
but we're an important part of that story or that event, and really changing our perspective.
And the truth is, I mean, just being super candid, like that's not my default, is to have a conversation with the Uber driver.
No, I mean,
it's not. And I know it needs to be, but and it shows you by like what you're doing, who you're spending time with, and surrounding yourself with. Because that morning we had a speaker at the conference.
It influences you.
That he was a missionary in Africa, in this really remote area and all this stuff, and got super sick with malaria and almost died, had to come back, and was debating on whether or not to take this ministry position in New York, and was praying about it, and hopped in a cab, and his cab driver was from that remote village in Africa where he had been. And so he was able to meet a group of people from that area in New York and get to share the gospel with them, and had more success doing that. But that all came from a conversation.
Wow.
Like if he would have never talked to his cab driver, he would have never, put those two together. And so that was a story that I had just heard, And so then I get in with the Uber driver, and I'm thinking, I don't know where it's going to go. He might shut me down real quick, but it's not. Yeah, that's not the point. The point's to be obedient and just see where it goes.
Well, into the story that was shared Sunday, during the sermon with the story of Rahab, it's like, yes, for that one person, right? But also, I think it just shows how God is so detailed, because he can take care of Rahab and do all these things and bring those guys to her for a reason and a purpose, because we know that she's in the lineage of Christ. Right. But then we also know what happened with, right, the band, and then the walls falling down, and like all those things. So it's like, I think when we put him in compartments, I think we sometimes also, in our worldly minds, limit what he's capable of.
Sure.
He's like, hey, I can do 500 things at once, and it's all going to be purposeful and meaningful.
Yeah.
To your point, Jeff, like, I just want you to obey, because we kind of go, well, God kind of wants me to do this thing. And he's like, actually, I'm doing 500 things.
Right.
You're just a part of a bigger picture, and that picture is his purpose.
Right.
So it's always a good reminder. Like, even when you share stories like that, it's just always kind of refreshing to be like, man, absolutely. Yeah. Because he's not changing,
Yeah. Because there's so many times where, you know what, I'm just going to sit back here and just let him drive. Like, I'm so tired. or if this has been a busy day, whatever it is, we can come up with a million excuses. And we do that with our own families. We've been working all day. Y'all go play. And we miss that day with our kids because we're being lazy.
And, I do want to say this too. It's like, when you're at a missions conference and you get in an Uber and the guy says, "Hey, what are y'all here for?" And you say, "I'm here for a missions conference." It's easy to start the conversation.
Or it's easy for the conversation to go nowhere.
Well, no, I get that.
But it is a good
But what I'm saying,
conversation
like,
opener.
what if
Sure.
it wasn't? What if you weren't at that? What if we were just going to go out to eat?
Sure.
And
I'm in sales.
whatever. Yeah.
Sure.
How do you start that conversation? And I'm not asking you to answer that question, but in our minds, we have to be thinking about that. And another example was brought up. School calls you, your kid's doing bad, and you go up to the school and you're like, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to discipline my child. But hey, while I'm here, I want you to know that I really appreciate you as a school administrator calling me. How can I pray for you?"
Right.
Like, that's flipping the script.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
normally I would be so embarrassed. I wanted them to see my anger to my wrath to my kid. He's not going to get a good way with this.
Right.
This
Sure.
isn't an example about my
And
kid.
you
'cause
say
he's
don't
perfect.
answer it, but I think for most
Well, okay,
people,
we can
all
answer. Yeah,
five
maybe.
that are listening,
Sure,
I feel
maybe
like
we need to answer.
maybe it's not sales, but even if people go on like a girls trip, right, or a guys trip,
Anything.
or a family trip, it's like you've got a waiter, you've got a it's not always going to be a right. To Jeff's point, it could fall on its face and be shut down real quick. If you say missions conference, the guy will be like, "Nope,"
Yeah.
right, but you're being asked, "What are you here for?" Bam, that's a perfect way to enter into the conversation and say exactly what you're here for and see how it's received. To your point, Tommy, if somebody says, "Well, what are you here for?" Or "What are you doing?"
Work conference.
Work conference,
not-
or "Hey, I'm here. We're here with my family. We're just kind of visiting." Like, how do you detour that into?
Yeah.
Hey, like,
Here's the easiest thing that I would say to that. Man, how long have you been a driver?
yeah,
Are you from here?
yeah.
just-
Start getting curious about them.
Just curious about them.
Yep.
And man, once they start sharing, "Oh man, I just moved here from Phoenix," and "Oh man, you got any kids? How old are your kids?" Like, just having that simple conversation will open up opportunity. You'll hear something. Man, and it did. That's how I started. Literally, he's like, "Oh, that's cool," or whatever. And so I asked him about his family, and I was like, "Man, do you have a church around here?" And that's where it went to spiritual things. It didn't go from, "Oh, you're at a missions conference." It went from, "Hey, do you have a church?"
Yeah, I hear you. And like the guy in Japan who walked up next to you, "Hey, what y'all here for?" "Oh, we're here for this and that."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, I want to get closer to God."
Yeah, that was
I know,
crazy.
but
Sure.
it's, I guess what I'm trying to say, for those listening who say, "Well, that example, it's easier to get into the conversation." But if I'm not there on some mission or some special event, how do I start the conversation? One example that I really enjoyed that I witnessed one time, we were at a restaurant and we were getting ready to pray for over a meal.
Yeah.
And the waitress happened to be there, and the person I was with asked, "Hey, we're about to say a prayer over our meal. Would you like to join it? We're going to pray. Can we pray for you? What's your name?" Is there something? And just to see her, the demeanor change, like, "Oh my goodness," yes, and she's like pouring out some stuff, and that's an example. But
And
to
I
your
would
point,
say
it's
to
not
that-
always going to work either.
And I would say to that, I have never been successful with that.
Yeah.
I have never had
Well,
anybody.
don't say never. Don't say never. I was with you, Jeff.
And a waitress?
You and I were at Waffle House, and you and I prayed over our meal, and we.
But
did,
you asked.
did I?
You asked.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
good for me.
Yeah, you did that.
For me,
Yeah.
Hit that applause.
You did that.
Can you hit that applause?
it's too far. It's too far.
No, but I mean,
Okay.
I can't remember honestly somebody going, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Here's how you can pray for me." And most, "I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good."
But to your point earlier,
That's okay.
that's okay. We shouldn't.
Yeah.
We shouldn't. Oh, this is getting good. This is like when we treat our spouse. We shouldn't go into that expecting a certain response.
Right.
We need to do it out of obedience and love. What greater love is it than to share the gospel or in some way, to share God's love and to extend that to someone?
Yeah, Erin was sharing with me a story. I forget where she read it, who was involved. So please just know this is not like a story of somebody close or anything, but it was something she was reading. And essentially, it was this pastor that essentially said like he had felt conviction about to what we're talking about, sharing the gospel more. And I know what it was. It was Lee Strobel, the guy that wrote Case for Christ.
Yeah.
Lee Strobel was speaking to this person and essentially doing what we're talking about, sharing the gospel with this person. And what Lee Strobel didn't know is that there was this guy that's telling the story that was listening kind of on the outskirts of the conversation at this kind of event thing or whatever, because he was kind of seeking out a little bit, but also was real hesitant. So just kind of being curious about faith in the Lord. And the guy that Lee Strobel was sharing the gospel with, essentially the story goes that he kind of rejected Lee Strobel. Was like, kind of like, thanks, no thanks kind of deal. But what this guy's story was is like what Lee Strobel didn't know is that the stuff that he was sharing to that guy was hitting this guy.
Yeah.
And it caused him to go and wonder and be curious, dig in more. And Lee Strobel in that kind of situation and scenario is part of this guy's testimony. And his whole point was like, hey, be obedient and share, because you never know when you're sharing who the Lord
listening.
is kind of placing around for the gospel to do work.
Right.
Not that Lee Strobel failed in not getting that guy, because to the left or right, wherever he was like the Lord was working on that guy's
That's
heart. So
awesome.
that's like the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
Instead of expecting somebody to respond in a certain way to the words that we're sharing so eloquently, it's like, no, the Holy Spirit does the work.
Right.
Like the hearts are softening for those that the Lord is pursuing. So
And people will pick up in an instant, just like you would, if someone's genuine or not.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
And that's why I love that approach, is because, you know, and this new friend that I was telling you about that was in the, you know, he was asking me about those things. And I was just saying, like, I want to know people's story.
Genuinely.
Not as a ploy,
Right.
but I genuinely want to get to know them. And so that's just an easy way, man, to hear if they mention anything, if they go anywhere with something, or they say something, they're like, man, that was really difficult. How'd you get through that time? You know, people want a friend. And so if you're genuine, it'll come through.
And man, how short our life is.
Yeah.
And just taking these moments to really, that's really what living life is about.
Yeah.
Is taking advantage of the moment.
So here's something that Aaron and I, it's really kind of just recently transformed our approach to life in general, really. But we read a quote that it said, you know, it doesn't, at the end of your life, it doesn't matter what you've done, what you've accomplished, is how you've made people feel. Think about it, right? Like, who cares if you did all of these things and you have all these accolades, but you made me feel like dirt or inferior or whatever, not welcomed,
Right.
you know, but you remember those people where you're like, man, I felt like I was at home. I felt like I could share anything with them. I felt
It's
loved.
a legacy.
And that's, man, how do people feel when they see you coming?
And maybe, because I've also heard that, hey, instead of leaving a legacy, leave Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that should be the legacy.
Right.
It shouldn't be our legacy. It's Jesus' legacy that's lived out through us.
Right.
But
no.
so let me. Oh, you got
No.
okay, so let me ask this.
ahead.
How do we get to that? How do we get to that spot where it's less default to the natural and more of this new approach of flipping things with an eternal purpose? How do we get that?
Unfortunately, I'm 46 years old and it's just starting to click. But I think a lot of it is remembering. You know, we talked about it in group. Like, it's easy to read the story of Abraham and see all these things that God did. And then when things didn't work out, he panicked and did things in his own strength and messed everything up, you know, and you're like, dude, come on, bro. How do you not remember all of that?
Remember we even talked about, like, he had a physical encounter.
Sure.
It wasn't, you know, it was
There's
literally
no denying what his eyes saw.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
And I like what you said, Jeff, too, because there was something that was in our small group lesson, too, from the Ephesians and J.D. Greer's thing that we're walking through. And, you know, we have scripture to show us what the stories tell us and how everything unfolded in those events with like Abraham and all that. But like in the same sense, like God's writing, like our story's being written right now until we take our last breath.
Yeah.
So to that same point, it's like, what will my story show?
Yeah.
How many, oh my word, how did you not see that just in a moments will there be? Or, oh my word, how could you do that or think that after he did all these things? So like, it's really easy to throw blame or, you know, put our palm to our forehead when we read some of these stories, but it's like we're just as guilty and we're just the same.
And just like Abraham, though, like it's easy to see it and judge him. But when you look at the process of his life, I mean, early on, man, he questioned everything and did stuff the wrong way. But the Lord was still faithful to him and taught him. And he learned his lessons through those till you get to the point where he finally gets the promised son, right? And he's like, hey, get up early in the morning, go sacrifice him. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, didn't even question it. But that's the growth, right? Like, I think sometimes we're just like, well, I can't do that, or I'm not that, or whatever. I've messed up so much. And I keep going to this default. Well, let's start learning. Let's start remembering. And let's start putting some of these pieces together. And for me, it 100% is that perspective.
Yeah.
Like,
And so it kind of goes back to this is like a full circle conversation, because every single day is a new day, a new mercy, a new year, could be your new year, whatever it is. So if you mess up the day before, you didn't get it right yesterday, we've got tomorrow to redo.
His mercies are new, man.
And so I just want to reiterate, remembering, what God has done and what his promises are will help us transform the way we live our life every day in the mundane to a greater, higher purpose. And it's easier for us to remember those things if we really make the time to spend with him.
Yeah.
As we talked about, just the absence of that time, we will naturally drift back over to the default
To rush
through
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, say it, Tommy. What's the verse? What's your verse your memory verse, your life verse?
What you talking about? Psalms 139, 23 and 24.
Yeah, which says,
I mean, it says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way in me. Lead me into life everlasting."
and what do we say? Like, you pray that, be prepared for the Lord
man.
to go. Okay, like you've asked
I'm
for
gonna
it, now I
show
want to go to
you.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that humility piece
Yeah.
that sometimes we don't want to always go to. Because I think in a weird way, like, we want what God says he'll offer and provide, but in this weird human fleshly kind of way, we're like, that's so scary to think about giving everything up and just really letting him work.
Yeah.
Like, if I could pick and choose what it would be, that'd be great. But he's like, I want it all. Let me go to work.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things too that Lord really convicted me about at this missions conference this past week was I've had some excuses in the background of, my kids' age and like not right now and whatever the Lord wants to do. Like, I've kind of taken that empty check off the table, for him to, hey, if you want to call us back to the mission field, call us back to the mission field. If you want us to go, but I've kind of been like, not yet. My kids are at a really critical age and they're, I've had all these excuses and, and somebody said it at the conference, is like, I think I know your kids better than you do.
Yeah.
I think I know what they need better than you do.
Yeah.
So if I call you, just be obedient.
Yeah.
Oof. Golly.
Dagger.
Yeah. So that one got me pretty good. So, but yeah, just being willing to be obedient. So, man, there's so many cool things to happen at this time of the year. And so I just pray that as you hear this, maybe you're thinking, man, I've already messed up my New Year's resolutions, man. Start February 1st with us.
Do it. I mean, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
new mercies.
I'm
every
excited, so excited about this year, y'all, and just really so thankful for you guys and thankful for everyone out there listening. We appreciate it.
Day. 2025, baby.